The body-mind exists in a state of timelessness. It does not understand time. The body-mind exists in one moment, only ever in one moment, in relation with all of the data stored within it that has been affected by every prior moment since infancy, and is attempting to assist in the navigation of every potential moment that ever could be, especially as consciousness expands and moves into greater realms of possibility. When the body-mind is navigating potentials, its unconscious state projects potentials based on what it has experienced. But as consciousness expands its essence and thus expands the capacity for the body-mind to be an effective container for consciousness, then consciousness is actually resculpting the body-mind, rewriting how prior moments are stored in present data, and resculpting the potential projections of infinite possibility that may unfold. Deepak Chopra describes it as moving beyond the predictable patterns. And that is a big intention of the expansion of consciousness, is to move beyond the predictable patterns. The predictable patterns are when the unconsciousness is sculpting life based on the data that already exists. But then as the true self awakens to its natural essence, then it kind of interjects into that subconscious, unconscious conversation to some degree or more or less, and can start to shapeshift it. And it is always a journey, but it is the most transcendent, worthwhile journey that could ever be fathomed. And so the body-mind exists in a state of timelessness. It doesn't necessarily understand the differentiation between data from 35 years ago and data from 20 minutes ago. It only understands what information is being activated and how strongly that information is being activated. And so there's all of this information, but what information is being engaged and how strongly is it being engaged and how long is it being engaged? And that is affecting the navigation and regulation in the body-mind that is impacting uniquely individualized experiences for consciousness. And so the abstracting navigational associations method, one of the many, many, many amazing results of my Implicit Revelations case study in sculpting new ways to understand, heal, nourish, restore, and expand body-mind well-being while activating, awakening, reunifying, expanding, and liberating the essence of self as divine consciousness. And so among the dozens and dozens of miracles that have resulted from my Implicit Revelations case study is the abstracting navigational associations method. And we use the concept of the body-mind existing in a state of timelessness and all of its information existing in a space beyond time. And so when I first started to really hone in on this method, I could not remember my entire life. And I was just beginning to have the capacity to create new conscious, explicit memories again. But there was no sense of self because I couldn't remember my life. There literally was no sense of self. So even when explicit memory started to formulate after half a decade of severe amnesia, you can find out more about my personal story that's led to the work I do through my Becoming Known Through Implicit Revelations documentary series. There's a playlist here on YouTube, and I also have a very lengthy webpage of my Implicit Revelations case study that also shares the Known documentary series. And so after half a decade of really severe amnesia, I then started to come out of that, and the body-mind was able to create explicit memories for the first time in a very long time. But there was no sense of self, and I couldn't remember my entire life. And so one of the times that I started to actually use the abstracting navigational associations method was when I was driving in a very specific area, and there was a road that just slightly curved, like not perfectly straight, but not big sharp turns. So it just kind of like gently winded, right? And there were really tall trees on either side of the road. And at a point where there was no sense of self, I couldn't remember my entire life. Couldn't remember literally anything that had ever happened before. I couldn't even remember any of the abstract associations that we have in every day. Like, what are the things that you like? What's your style? What's your preference? Like, none of that was information I even had access to. There was literally no sense of self. I couldn't remember anything that had ever happened before in decades of experience. And so I was driving, but I could remember how to drive because those are unconscious memories, to be clear. Couldn't remember any explicit details, even though all the data was still there. It just wasn't connected in a way I could access. But all of the unconscious memories were still there. They were just very disintegrated. They didn't have connection with each other, and the content wasn't navigating life at optimal capacity. But all of those automated muscle movements were still accessible. So it's not like I forgot how to drive in this clarified example, because even though I couldn't remember ever learning to drive, my body remembered the details of knowing how to drive, because that's a different kind of memory. Okay, so I was driving because I remembered how to drive, even though I didn't remember driving before. Miracles, am I right? I was driving on this road, and I was able to connect with a childhood memory of driving those play toy type cars at a theme park. Certain kinds of theme parks, they have those little pretend cars, and when you're a kid, you drive in it, and it goes on a track, and you can kind of maybe turn the steering wheel and go a little more centered or not, but you're on like a track, and you can, push the pedals. And so when I couldn't remember my entire life at all because of this severe and unique amnesia that I healed myself from independently of any external guidance or assistance, all through the work of my implicit revelations, I can remember my life now, by the way. This was about 2.5 years ago. And all of my body-mind has been totally rewritten exclusively through social self-engagement practices and the other techniques I've created, like implicit transformation. Without directly working with memories, just nourishing attachment systems, all of it got effectively rewritten in a very enjoyable and rapidly accelerated process. So, but for this example, abstracting navigational association. So I was driving in this space, and my body-mind was activating every type of abstract association of experiential element and projecting that into the navigation of my body-mind to interpret experience for consciousness. And so I was driving there, and my body-mind was like, okay, I'm trying to find associated data to help interpret the navigation of this moment. Sorry for background noise. And so I was driving there, and my body-mind was activating information very specifically from a childhood memory of driving those play toy type cars at a theme park. And I could not remember those experiences yet. I could not remember the self that was there, and I could not orient in the self that was now. None of that was a capacity of the navigational systems of my body-mind. Nevertheless, my body-mind was able to activate all the different abstract associations in relation with the experiential elements, something about that very particular windy road with a very particular style of trees on each side was parallel with a memory from that. And so even with all of this disintegrated data and all this severe disruption of navigation and regulation and all of this stuff, I was able to use the abstracting navigational associations method to connect deeper with parts of self and gradually integrate all of the data so that my body-mind can navigate existence more effectively. So that all the parts of the self can fully be here now, and so that all of that data can fully interpret now. And so that all of consciousness, who's now fully here, in a more effective navigational body-mind system can then move forward to expand reunification and loving liberation and solidify a new style of body-mind navigation and regulation from the inside out. Shape-shifting existence from within. And so the body-mind doesn't understand time. It exists in a state of timelessness. And the abstracting navigational associations method allows us to tap into that and connect with very abstract associations. Okay, in this example, it was the slightly windy road with a pretty slow mile per hour, which actually added to it. Wasn't going very fast. And certain kind of trees on each side of the road, a certain style of weather and atmosphere and blue skies and sunshine and a certain temperature contributed to the activation of abstract associations of experiential elements that allow me to connect. So in that moment, my body-mind doesn't understand its existence in relation with a particular space and time. It understands its existence in relation with how internal data is being activated based on internal and external stimulus, and then projecting navigation into realities of consciousness to stimulate a uniquely individualized experience for the self. And so ANAM, abstracting navigational associations method, harnesses the power of the body-mind existing in a state of timelessness and taps into that and uses very specific activations of experiential elements, that certain type of song or genre of music or artist, that certain type of clothing or style or texture, that very certain type of the way that you do your hair and the way it feels to do your hair that way and the way it feels to look at yourself in a mirror when your hair is done that way, a very certain style of exercise or physical bodily movement, a certain style of visual stimulus and where and what and how you are looking at a very specific surrounding area, very specific individuated experiential elements to activate the abstract associations in the body-mind and resculpt them in a specified manner. And so this method can be used to understand inner realities, unveil inner realities, expose hidden secrets of inner realities, go deeper into a greater knowing of the inner workings of the body-mind to expand awareness. And or it can also be used to specifically resculpt regions of the body-mind, specifically resculpt content and connectivity throughout trillions of energetic pathways, specifically shapeshift the messages in the body-mind and the way that they're connecting with each other. And this can help improve or shapeshift or resculpt or alter styles of navigation and regulation, and or it can also reunify parts of the self so that the parts of the self in this example who were in that childhood experience are now oriented with the self that is here in a brand new present moment, but not looking at the experience, but simply reorienting the inner experiencer with the totality of its own essence. And so the body-mind does not understand time. It exists in a state of timelessness. And it only understands the navigation of its own existence as various styles of inner and outer stimulus activate the data that is already within it. But if we want to move beyond the way that the data presently exists, if we want to move beyond the automated styles of navigation and regulation in the body-mind, if we want to move past the way that reality is being interpreted, then we have to interject and tap into the data that's in the body-mind. And again, this data has been affected by every prior moment since infancy and is attempting to assist us in navigating life moving forward. And so the power of consciousness, who also exists in a state of timelessness by only ever being in a present now moment, has this infinite inner power to understand and unveil and translate the hidden inner workings of the body-mind, and then resculpt and interject its loving presence to influence those structures. and start to shapeshift its own existence from the inside out. And that's what my work really touches on. That's what my work really focuses on and provides really enjoyable and effective avenues to achieve. And so each of my offerings does that in a different way, and they're really, really magical. So just wanted to share a little implicit revelations case study note. The abstracting navigational associations method is really magical, and you can kind of explore it just by like discussing the concept of it, or you can apply it in a very specific personal situation or experience. The potential is infinite and limitless. If you'd like to dive deeper into any of these concepts, I invite you to explore my offerings through Sacred Soul Sessions, a one-time connection call with 12 different offerings to choose from and see which one best fits your journey. Or, better yet, a multi-month personalized pathway where we connect every week or every other week for several months and continue to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into the application of a wide variety of the combination of these ideas I've created through my Implicit Revelations case study to personally achieve your healing journey, intention for loving liberation. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being you. I hope you have a beautiful and blessed day. With the abstracting navigational associations method, it's less about the actual experiential element and more about the way that that experiential element connects with patterns of thinking, feeling, moving, and responding in relation with that element. And so, for example, if you say, yeah, there's abstract associations of ceiling fans, and you're trying to connect with a very particular sensation from a particular time period of life regarding how the body-mind felt and thought and moved and responded, and reunify with those parts of the self, it's not enough to just say ceiling fan. Because you could stand underneath a ceiling fan, but if it's not a similar style of feeling and sound created from the fan, it's not necessarily going to activate that information, okay? So, for example, if you are trying to connect with information from a certain year of life in relation with the abstract association of the experiential element of ceiling fans, and you stand under a ceiling fan, but the sound of the fan moving is different, and the feeling of the wind being created by that fan is different, that is not going to activate that specific region. And so it's not just about the experiential element of ceiling fan. It's about the experiential elements of how that ceiling fan created sensory data that the body-mind felt and responded to. The patterns of emotions and the pattern of movement or sensation in the body. And exploring that is really, really, really profound because you get into the subtleties of body-mind wiring and activity. And another example with that is if you're trying to connect with a particular sensation from a certain time period of life, and you just say the word fan, then there's so many different variables, because there's like little small fans, and there's like really big circular fans, and there's like box fans, and there's different kinds of ceiling fans, and they all have a different way of feeling. And the sound that you hear from the fan and the feeling in your skin that you feel from the wind generated by the fan, and it's going to activate data in association with those sensations. And so when you get into the subtleties of the application of this method, there's like so many really beautiful little variables, and that's what I work with and dive really deep into. Okay, super neat. So I have further clarification and explaining this abstracting navigational associations method, okay? So let's explore this. So there's an experiential element. We'll use fan as an example, there's an experiential element, and it can be general or specific. You could just say fans, and then from there, there's more specificity in experiential elements. So you've got ceiling fans, box fan, a hand fan that you like hold with your hand fan, okay, small fan, like one of the, like you plug into the wall and it's like self-standing and it's maybe this big and maybe like a circular thing, and then you have like big ones of those and maybe they like stand off the ground a few feet tall, big fan, like self-standing round fans, okay, and so then you have all these different kinds of fans, okay, and so there's these abstract associations of experiential elements, okay? So these are the experiential elements, fan, and then different types of fans, okay? But then it goes further from the thing that there is to the various sensations that it stimulates, okay? And so let's take the ceiling fan for this example. That is a specific example that I studied in depth in the Implicit Revelations case study. Okay, so in this example, we're looking at the ceiling fan, and it stimulates a certain type of sound, a certain feeling on the skin, and there's a certain style about that fan that you can visually see. And so if you are connected with the time period or specific memory from that, and you stand under a ceiling fan, you'll be able to instinctively connect and differentiate and determine whether the feeling of being under that ceiling fan reminds you of this one particular experience of standing under a ceiling fan or not. Okay? In this very specific example, okay, these sensations might have been from like age 9 or 10, for example. And then, decades later, your intention is to connect with that childhood self. But since then, you've stood under, maybe like 100 different ceiling fans in your life in all kinds of scenarios. Okay, so there's all of this data connected with all these different sounds and feelings and sights of ceiling fans. But you're trying to connect with a very specific region of data from a very specific time in early life of feeling and seeing and hearing a ceiling fan, okay? And maybe you pick one of those to emphasize, maybe the feeling on the skin of the fan, moving in a certain rate in a certain way with certain type of blades that create a certain momentum of wind, okay? And so you'll be able to stand under ceiling fans and you'll be able to tell and differentiate whether it has connection with that data or not. And you could stand under like 30 different kinds of ceiling fans and maybe 2 of them have the sound and the feeling on the skin that connects with this, and maybe none of them have the same style of the actual fan. And so you have the experiential element, and then you have more specificity with that experiential element. And from there, there's abstract associations of navigational messages in relation with the experiential elements. And that is the core concept of this method. And then from there, you go into social self-engagement to actually utilize this method to transform it. Okay, so in this example, you would find that ceiling fan that does have a similar sound or feeling on the skin to that ceiling fan that is connected with data from age 9 or 10, and you're here decades later, and yeah, there's all this other data of ceiling fans, but you're connecting with this one region to cultivate inner child liberation. And so you find a ceiling fan that feels like that, and you stand under that ceiling fan, and you practice a form of social self-engagement, and you actually integrate that data from early childhood, even without directly working with other particulars of that time. You're not working with any memories. You've just identified an experiential element that links with data from that time period of life, and then you're using that experiential element, you're abstracting it. You're using the abstract association, you're abstracting that experiential element from the memory data, and you're using it independently of the details of memories to restore that part of the body-mind by practicing social self-engagement now, by activating that region of data while practicing a form of social self-engagement. Okay, but the core foundation of this is that there is an experiential element, and then there's more specificities of the variables of that experiential element. And then from the experiential element itself, then there's navigational messages, abstract associations of navigational messages. And these can be individuated forms of sensory processing. They can be individuated sensations of feelings or movement patterns. And so, and in the other example of the car driving, there's the abstract, there's the experiential element of driving a car, and that was the foundation of it. And then there were other experiential elements of a certain type of weather, driving on a certain type of road, and maybe even being in a certain type of nervous system regulation if you want to get into it. But the core experiential element was driving a car. And then from that foundation, then there were abstract associations of navigational messages. And it was utilized in this like really astounding way. And then developed over many years and became this like solidified method that has so much potential. Just to share a more specific instance of application for the abstracting navigational associations method, explore with me here. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about the method itself, the technique, kind of some concepts of the abstract idea of it. In specific personal application, though, this can be used for so many different things. And the way you'd go about it is if you want to start by specifying a body-mind region to resculpt, and then using ANAM to resculpt it. Okay? And so you could do it by exploring any of the 5 elements that describe the organization of trillions of energetic pathways in the body-mind. You can look at the explicit, implicit data from each year of life, data within each of the roles of the neurobiological social engagement system that each have distinct, specific navigational priorities. You can look at a specific aspect or element of self-associations or abstract associations of experiential elements. Okay, so let's say, for example, that you're recovering severe amnesia, like I was, and you want to really connect with a very specific year of life. And so even though there's decades of data, you want to reconnect the body-mind, the navigational priorities with a very specific year of life, okay? Or there's infinite other applications of this one. Let's say there was a very specific year of life where there was a lot of pain and struggle and difficulty and stressors, maybe trauma. Or maybe a year of life where there was a lot of relational conflict. And maybe there wasn't like all these like crazy stressors and these other life variables. And maybe most of life was fine. But maybe specifically in some friendships or something, there was a lot of pain and difficulty. And you want to like transform the data created from those experiences without looking at the experiences themselves. Or the flip side, maybe there were a few years of life where you just felt joy and you want to allow the navigational systems of your body mind to have greater connection with the data created from those years of life. Okay, so it could be to transform stuff that wasn't good or to have greater connection with the stuff that was good, basically, as an example of this one. Roles of the neurobiological social engagement system. You can look at the specific roles and say, okay, I want to transform the content in this role and then help reconnect it with these other regions of data. Okay, self-associations, if there's a certain aspect of the way you associate with your own existence and thus subsequently associate with all components of reality, you can look at that. And an example of that would be self-associations. If you're shape-shifting your self-associations, maybe you would work with a certain hairstyle and it has nothing to do with hair, but you're using the abstract experiential element to shapeshift the way you associate with yourself. Okay, just one of the infinite trillions of examples. Kind of a silly one, but they're all valid. And then with the abstract associations of experiential elements, for example, if someone gets triggered by a certain sound or a certain form of stimulus, or the taste of a certain food, or the texture of a certain fabric, okay? If you get triggered in a negative way by some form of stimulus, and this can happen, for example, in complex post-traumatic stress disorder as one of infinite possibilities, but if there's a certain type of element of experience, like stimulus processing, that triggers you, you can use the abstract association of that experiential element. And it can also be used in other ways as well, but that's one example. Okay, so if you want to use the abstracting navigational associations method to resculpt a specific region of the body mind, then the first step is to pinpoint the region of the body mind, and you can come at it from any of these angles depending on what your intention is. Okay, so we end with the intention, but you also begin with the intention. Okay, so you have an intention. Hi, I'm here and I want to resculpt this region of my body mind for this purpose. Okay, you come in and you say, I want to resculpt this region of my body mind for this purpose. Okay, that's where it starts. And then you say, okay, how can we reach into that particular region of the body mind in relation with your intention? And which one of these is the best angle to come in at it with? Okay, once you've decided which one to focus on here, and this is one I've used a lot. This is probably the one I've used the most in terms of personal experience of applying this technique and studying it through the Implicit Revelations case study, but you can come in at it from any of these. Okay. Then you're going to choose a specific experiential element that allows you to reach into that region of the body mind. Okay, and so we're going back to this example of the ceiling fan. Someone's up here and an adult decades after their original childhood, right? And there's data of a certain type of ceiling fan from ages 9 or 10. And the intention is to resculpt data from that time period and reconnect it with data now. Okay, and so the experiential element would be ceiling fan, a very specific type of ceiling fan. Okay, so then you're going to choose a specific experiential element that allows you to reach into that region of the body mind in relation with this stuff. And this part is incredible and mind-blowing and astounding and miraculous in transformative, transcendent ways. Because when you use an experiential element to activate a region of the body mind in relation with one of these concepts, you're activating all of the other data that's around it. You're activating all the other data that's around it. So in this example, you're not just activating the individual experiences when you felt that type of ceiling fan from ages 9 or 10. You're also activating all the data from those years of life, all the explicit and implicit connectivity in relation with that abstract experiential element, and all the years of life, etc., etc. So you're activating a whole region of the body mind by using 1 to 3, probably 1 to 3 abstract associations of experiential elements or specific type of experiential elements. Okay, 1 to 3 is usually what we work with. You can work with more than that. Maybe in other practices, but for one practice, you want to just work with like 1 to 3 experiential elements. So you're not like activating a bunch of different regions in the body mind. You're honing in on one specifically. But you can always have different experiential elements to activate different body mind regions for different intentions and purposes. And then you do practices that use both of those at different times. Okay, so when you're choosing an experiential element, 1 to 3 of them, to reach into a specific body mind region, you're not just activating the memories unconsciously of navigational patterns in relation with those experiential elements, you're also activating all of the surrounding data. And neuroscience shows us that every time that data is activated, it's automatically reconstructed. And so as soon as it becomes activated through this intentional practice, there's this opportunity to resculpt it, to resculpt data from any year of life, to resculpt any region of explicit, implicit content and connectivity, to resculpt any of the roles of the neurobiological social engagement system and the messages that they have regarding distinct styles of how to navigate specific priorities in life, like emotional and physical intimacy, for example, emotional and physical well-being, rest and restitution, mutual support, cooperation, etc. And it can also be in assistance with social disengagement roles. If you want to resolve a stress response, you can work with the social disengagement role and use specific experiential elements to help resolve that stress response using this technique and this method. Okay? And so you're working with this whole big region of the body mind, how that experiential element affects or is in correlation with self-associations, and thus is allowing the self to associate with that experiential element, and all the different ways that that experiential element is connected with other abstract associations of other experiential elements. So you're reaching into like so much data in this process and this practice, and it is really, really profound and remarkable. Like it's humbling to even think about the complexities of this. It's mind-blowing, truly. Okay, and I've spent years studying this, and it's just amazing. Okay, so and then with it also forgot to mention. Okay, so is your intention to transform, transmute, rewrite, resculpt the content, or is it to expand and resculpt and rewrite the connectivity of the data? Or are you trying to do both? Okay, and so are you trying to rewrite how the experience from that year exists in the body mind? Or are you just trying to make new connections with how that navigational data is reaching into present navigational patterns that are prioritized in instinctive activations? Okay, so then there's a clarification of whether you're trying to resculpt the content or the connectivity or both, and which one is top priority if you are doing both. Okay, so once you've chosen the experiential element, then you get into the abstract associations of navigational messages. And going back to the example, there's that ceiling fan. And the example of this is a very specific type of sound, a specific type of feeling on the skin regarding the wind and the air that it makes as it moves. And those were the priorities. Okay, those two things were the priorities in using this technique. Okay, and so then you decipher details of accurate activation, existing styles of abstract navigational messages. Okay, so how can you use this experiential element to be so specific that you activate the region of the body mind that you're actually trying to activate? Okay, in this example, there were a bunch of different ceiling fans, but only a few of them actually activated the region of the body mind that we are trying to activate, because only a few of them matched the sensory stimulus and processing and allowed for a feeling on the skin and a sound in the ears, where that ceiling fan had similar navigational messages through abstract associations as the ceiling fan that was connected with that region of data. Okay, so then you explore what are the actual details of the navigational messages through abstract associations required to solidify the accuracy of body-mind region activation. Okay, got a little wordy there. Okay, but that sums it up really well. Okay, so you're trying to decipher the details. How can I use this experiential element to be accurate in engaging the region of the body-mind I'm actually trying to rewrite, and not just like not doing that? Okay, so what about that experiential element needs to be there for the technique to work, to be accurate in what region of the body mind I'm trying to actually engage and resculpt? Okay, and then once you decide that, then you establish the intention. And the most common intention that I've played with through studying this in the Implicit Revelations case study is creating a new type of navigational message into that specific body-mind region. And that navigational message is implicit, okay? If you think of an explicit navigational message, there might be something like affirmations. I am seen. I am loved. The body-mind doesn't speak like that. You can say, I am seen and I am loved for, thousands of hours, but the body-mind needs to somatically sense the actual feeling of really feeling seen and really feeling loved for that message to be a navigational pattern. Okay, so there's explicit and implicit navigational patterns. We're working with implicit navigational patterns. And that also has to do with explicit and implicit memory data, which is part of the explicit implicit content connectivity. But explicit implicit memory data, we're working with unconscious memories. Unconscious memories and the patterns of feeling and movement stored in the emotional and procedural unconscious implicit memories deep, deep, deep in the body mind. We're just going to rewrite it because we can, right? Okay, so then you establish your intention. What are you actually doing this for, right? And then that goes to the beginning. You start here and then you end here, okay? You start here and then you end here. And this is the preface for using the technique for something really specific. Okay, and it could be, resolving an implicit health challenge, a mental, emotional, behavioral, habitual, action pattern, relational health battle of some degree. Whether it has a descriptor or not, resolving an implicit health challenge or improving implicit health, or it could be something in terms of expanding, and you want to expand connection with all parts of yourself, or you want to expand implicit well-being beyond what you're experiencing, or you want to expand the unification of your body-mind, or you want to expand some aspect, okay? So you could be healing from something or healing into something. You could be creating loving liberation from something or loving liberation into something, okay? So then you have your intention. What are you doing this for? What type of new navigational message are you trying to insert? And that could be feeling connected with parts of you from a certain year of life, independent of experiences, fully grounded in the present moment, okay? And so you have the intention. Okay, so when you're applying this method, you start with the intention, and then you figure out what region of the body-mind are you actually trying to resculpt here? And how can I reach into that body-mind region? And you can explore that through any of these 5 elements. And then are you trying to resculpt the content? Are you trying to resculpt the connectivity? Or both? And if it's both, which one is stronger priority? And then you choose 1 to 3 specific experiential elements that allow you to specifically activate the region of the body-mind you're wishing to resculpt. And then you decipher the details regarding how to use those experiential elements to effectively activate the region of the body-mind you're trying to use. Okay, what allows that thing to precisely engage that region of body-mind data. And then you return to your intention and solidify why you're here, why you're showing up for this. What's the purpose? What are you trying to resolve? What are you trying to expand into? What parts of you are trying to reconnect with? What regions of navigational messages are you trying to resculpt? What regions of implicit health are you trying to balance, harmonize, integrate, and provide equilibrium throughout? What is the why? Okay. And then you're ready to actually apply ANAM. The most powerful application of the abstracting navigational associations method is through social self-engagement practices. It can be used in other ways just to explore the body, mind, and shapeshift meaning-making associations, but even that is working at a surface level according to the data of the body-mind. Working with the deepest levels of the body-mind includes unconscious memories and the fulfillment of specific internal attachment needs to create certain styles of patterns regarding feeling and movement within the body mind, very, very deep in the body mind. And so you can use the abstracting navigational associations method just to explore the body mind and potentially shift some of the meaning making associations. But the way to most effectively apply it is to utilize social self engagement practices. And there's two techniques for this. The first is indirect ANAM, which means you're practicing social self-engagement practices, and every abstract association of experiential element that happens to be in the vicinity while you're practicing it is automatically resculpting the content and connectivity to improve implicit well-being. The direct application of ANAM is to choose a few specific experiential elements and the abstract associations they carry in the patterns of navigation in the body-mind, and then to practice social self-engagement very intentionally surrounding the activation of those experiential elements. And so, for example, in the first example I shared here, driving a very specific road, the road was winding a certain way, there was a certain type of temperature outside, a certain style of weather. If it was cloudy and rainy, then it wouldn't have activated the same information, okay? Certain style of weather, temperature, the sun's out, clear blue skies, maybe a couple white fluffy clouds. Certain style of weather, a certain style of road, surrounded by a certain style of trees, and a certain amount of other cars moving by as well. And so there are these experiential elements, and then there's the activation of all the abstract associations in the body-mind. And so by practicing social self-engagement very directly during the activation of that data beyond awareness, with some pieces within awareness, but most of it's happening beyond awareness, my inner best friend was able to reunify with those inner child self aspects, okay, from an experience of driving smaller pretend type cars at a theme park, a ride at a theme park of driving cars as a child. And so even though there was total amnesia and none of life could be consciously remembered, the body mind was still activating this disintegrated data because all the data was still there. It just wasn't connected in a way that it could navigate life or the self could access it in a unified manner. But all the data is always still there. And so by practicing direct social self-engagement, my inner best friend was able to reunify with those inner child self aspects and gradually integrate that data. Every time she was on that road, she practiced the same thing of being aware that there was some remembrance of being in some kind of car on some kind of a road. And that was also at the time where the age regression was completing its stages. The brain and the body had just completed its halted stages of neurodevelopment. And so it was learning to grow up for the first time, basically. And so by practicing direct social self-engagement, not looking at the navigation, not being like, oh my God, I can't remember my whole life, and I'm trying to remember this childhood memory so that I can connect with these parts of myself, just noticing that there were these experiential elements, and they were kind of having this certain style of abstract association activation, and then just practicing social self-engagement while being in that moment of experience where there were these surrounding experiential elements. Just practicing social self-engagement, which is a 5-step process that leads to 5 stages of implicit experience. And so by practicing loving presence, by practicing distinction connection between parts of the self, not the body-mind wiring, but parts of the self who are the inner experiencer, connected with the awareness of self. Self-attunement, the fulfillment of specific attachment needs, and growing attachments between the distinguished parts of the self, all of that data was able to be reconstructed in a much more effective way, very fluidly. I've resculpted my body-mind so much more effectively than if I had tried to be like, I need to rewrite my whole life and remember my whole life, but resculpt it so it navigates life better. Instead of working with the memories directly, instead of working with decades of experience stored in the body-mind, instead of working with the symptoms of disrupted implicit health like severe amnesia, just practicing social self-engagement, and so much more got achieved than ever imagined possible. And the journey was fun and loving and nourishing and created rapid and accelerated transformation. So much more than if I had been like, I can't remember my life, and I'm trying to remember my life, and I'm trying to resculpt a sense of self, and I'm trying to shapeshift my body, my navigation, and I'm trying to improve things. So when I, connect with some sort of experiential element, I remember connecting with it before. Instead, just practicing social self-engagement. And so that is just kind of a personal sneak peek into the application of this concept. The abstracting navigational associations method can be used directly or indirectly, and there's specific ways to go about doing it, and that is with the intention of transforming the body-mind. The method itself can also be used without social self-engagement to understand or shapeshift some of the meaning-making associations. It's especially helpful for just discussing and understanding how the body-mind works, how data is stored, how it's being activated, what's affecting this navigation. But then if you want to actually transform any of those abstract associations of experiential elements, this is the most effective way. Because if you work directly with the experiential element, you're only getting to a surface layer of what's possible. So just one of the dozens and dozens of amazing methods, techniques, practices, and concepts I've developed. Over 20,000 hours invested in this since before I can remember. And these concepts are life-changing and beautiful and tender and loving and effective and transformative beyond anything I could ever effectively articulate. Another example of an experiential element using the ANAM method is grass. If you're trying to connect with a very specific region of data and you're using that as a catalyzing tool to do so, it's not just enough for it to be grass, because there's so many different kinds of grass. And so if the data you're trying to get to is from an experience where there was grass that felt very, very soft, then walking on grass while using this technique that is maybe thicker blades and doesn't feel soft when you walk on it isn't going to help you access that data or those parts of the self. Just as another little example. Okay, one final Implicit Revelations case study note for this day of exploring abstracting navigational associations method in greater detail and with examples. Okay, so when we looked before, you establish your intention. You determine what region of the body-mind you're trying to activate to either understand or to transform, specifically to transform it. And then you choose which experiential elements you want to use to activate that region of the body-mind. And then you determine what details of the abstract associations will allow you to use that experiential element with great precision. And then you come to your intention of what you're actually trying to do here. You transforming, resculpting the content or the connectivity or both. Okay, and then going back to our example, there's a ceiling fan. And the way you can use it with precision is with identifying a very specific feeling on the skin and a very specific sound in the ears from that fan that directly connects with a specific region of memory data from a particular time period of life, a certain year or years of life. Okay? And so there's two different aspects of the navigational messages through abstract associations to be explored here. There's the navigational messages in the body mind, and there's the navigational messages in the body mind. Okay? Emphasis on body in the first one and emphasis on mind in the second, but they're both body mind. Okay, and so the first one is used to ensure that you're utilizing the experiential elements with precision to activate the region of the body mind that you're actually trying to resculpt. The second one describes the messages of navigation that you are resculpting. Okay? And that differentiation is important when you're actually like applying the technique and discussing and exploring its concepts and stuff. So just to add like another further clarifying piece. Okay, and so in this first one, you're looking at how that experiential element is activating a specific region of the body mind by using that experiential element with precision. And so you're using this piece of information in awareness when it comes to using this method to transform. The details of this are a little different if you're using the method just to understand the body mind, but same concept, just a little tweak in it. But when you're transforming it, you'll have aspects of sensory processing that allow you to match that experiential element with a specific body-mind region. And so this is a piece of information that you are intentionally using within your awareness to use the experiential elements to effectively activate the region of the body-mind you are intending to resculpt. And then this over here is the messages that are being resculpted, but you're not working with those directly with this technique. You can work with those messages directly, but the magic of this technique is that you can effectively achieve it through social self-engagement practices without actually working with any of these specific messages. And so you can actually resculpt it more effectively and more enjoyably by using social self-engagement instead of working directly with these messages. Okay, so then there's the body mind with the sensory processing, the stuff that's actually going in the body, the way the skin feels and the way the ear hears the sound and the feeling of that ceiling fan in this example. But then there are the messages in the mind of the body that affect navigation. Okay? And there might be patterns of thinking, feeling, moving, and responding, for example. And these are being resculpted beyond awareness if you use the abstracting navigational associations method through indirect or direct application in correlation with social self-engagement practices. Okay? And so then you're resculpting the messages of the body-mind while practicing social self-engagement. And there's precision with the region of the body mind you are resculpting by using the experiential element in direct correlation with specific navigational messages of sensory processing. Okay, so really neat clarification. The body mind is absorbing the messages, how the skin feels underneath that fan, okay? How the ears are hearing the sound of the blades turning. But then there's the body mind that has messages of all the different data that's being activated within that body-mind region that's indirectly being reconstructed in this process. It's so cool, it's so cool, it's so cool, it's so cool. This is like the neatest stuff that could like ever be. Another way to use this body-mind navigation of activation of experiential elements through abstract associations is where and how the eyes look. That is going to directly connect with certain body-mind regions that then have specific patterns of thinking, feeling, and moving. And so where and how the eyes look is its own kind of unique category of exploring that idea. Another aspect of these concepts that can be explored is through the navigation, regulation, correlation method in direct relationship with the abstracting navigational associations method. And so basically, there's a relationship between navigation in the body-mind and regulation in the body-mind. And if the experiential element is correlated with distinct styles of navigation, you're using that to activate a specific body-mind region with an intention of resculpting it, there also needs to be the awareness that that navigation could be affected by regulation. And so, does the navigation remain the same in various styles of regulatory states? And if so, that's great. Then it's a variable you don't have to consider, which is simplified. But a lot of times that's not the case, usually with unique order of wiring within the neurobiological social engagement system. And so if there's any styles of independent or individuated navigational systems in the body-mind, which you can find out more about in other of my recent videos, and videos from a long time ago actually too. But if there's individuated or independent regions of navigation in the body-mind, they are most likely correlated with independent or individuated styles of regulation in the body-mind. And in that case, the state of regulatory activity will affect how that stimulus of the experiential element is activating body-mind regions. And so to make sure that you're being as specific and precise as possible, then you would have to bring awareness into the style of regulatory state. And so if the navigation and regulation have total correlations, and the navigation doesn't change even when the body-mind is in different states of regulation, then you're kind of like free in the clear. But if there is some influence where the regulation shifts the navigation, then do you need to be in a certain regulatory state to use that experiential element to activate that body-mind region so that it can be resculpted? And if so, then before you go through the process of using ANAM through direct application, you need to play with how do you allow the body-mind to shift into a regulatory state that will allow for the effective activation of that body-mind region by using this abstract association of an experiential element. Navigation, regulation, correlation method with the abstracting navigational associations method. Does that experiential element hold alternate styles of navigational activations or engaging distinct body-mind regions when used in different regulatory states? And if so, then how can you create a practice that guides the body-mind to be in a regulatory state so that you can effectively use it? Or is there a different experiential element you can use that connects with that body-mind region when in these other styles of regulation? When utilizing ANAM, the Abstracting Navigational Associations method, again, there's indirect and direct application of it for various purposes. There's so much potential for it, but basically it improves implicit health and reunifies different parts of the self. There are 4 different categories of social self-engagement practices, and each category has dozens and dozens and dozens of individuated practices with hundreds of personalized potential applications of them. And so it's not just one way of practicing social self-engagement. There are literally hundreds of them that I've developed and utilized, all of them for all different reasons, from resolving severe implicit health challenges to remembering and recovering data for my whole life and healing the amnesia, healing over 50 different complex health challenges related with the health of the mind, emotions, body-mind-spirit connection, action patterns and habits, etc., and to just expand and be more connected with you and sculpt new data in the body-mind that can serve you moving forward. And so I've used all of them, and they're all really fun and really powerful. And so there's hundreds of practices with dozens of specific styles of practices in 4 distinct categories. Inward journeys of imagination, including self-hypnosis or guided meditations or hypnotic storytelling. Simple everyday moments, like while you're unloading a dishwasher or washing your hair, little things that you already do in your everyday life. Creative projects in your everyday life where you're engaging with external reality in some capacity, but with a very specific creative project to practice social self-engagement with activities you might not normally be doing in everyday life, like washing your hair or unloading the dishwasher. And marathons. And so there's 4 different categories of social self-engagement practices, and any of them can be used. And then there's a bunch of different practices within each of those. And so these are available in a wide variety of my courses, playbooks, videos, and practices through content creations. Some of them are shared freely online, and then there's a wide library in my business, Kristin's Quantum Catalyzer. And then I also offer them and share them through services, one-on-one sacred soul sessions, whether that's a one-time connection call or a multi-month personalized pathway. And so if you're interested in diving deeper into the application of these concepts, you can connect with me there. An Implicit Revelations case study note, utilizing the Abstracting Navigational Associations method, I was in a store looking at a hand lotion with a eucalyptus smell. And I looked at a bunch of other bottles, but that was one of the words on one of the bottles that I looked at. And of course, there's 100 other things that have happened throughout this one day, but that was among the forms of stimulus that came in. And then I was practicing social self-engagement then. And then I practiced a different style of social self-engagement a few hours later with a childhood photograph, and there were Beanie Babies in that picture. And I was actually able to look at one of the Beanie Babies and be like, oh my God, I think the name of that little koala bear is Eucalyptus. And I looked it up, and that was accurate. And so the body-mind is constantly gathering data of all the experiential elements and then reorchestrating the activity of their abstract associations. And if you work just with the associations or consciously accessible memories, you're only touching on the surface. But when you go deeper into attachment systems and the unconscious memories that they're connected with, you get so much more transformative results. I was mind blown that I was able to look at this picture from an experience a very long time ago with data that was not accessible before, and be able to remember a specific name of a stuffed animal, one of hundreds of stuffed animals that have been used. You know what I mean? And then after I did that, I kind of pieced, I wonder if I was more likely to remember the name of that one because it was a word that I saw a few hours prior. And so just a really interesting Implicit Revelations case study note, always diving deeper into my own concepts. They are life-changing and just really fascinating. So grateful to share and explore. And so you have the experiential element, and then you have more specificity with that experiential element. And from there, there's abstract associations of navigational messages in relation with the experiential elements. And that is the core concept of this method. And then from there, you go into social self-engagement to actually utilize this method to transform it. Really, really neat clarification. The body mind is absorbing the messages, how the skin feels underneath that fan, okay? How the ears are hearing the sound of the blades turning. But then there's the body mind that has messages of all the different data that's being activated within that body mind region that's indirectly being reconstructed in this process. It's so cool. It's so cool. It's so cool. It's so cool. This is like the neatest stuff that could like ever be.